here now. It's like finally like a real thing I can hold in my hands. One of you for coming out, because you could literally be doing anything right now, and I don't know about y'all, but I love being at my house. Like, if I have to put on pants to go somewhere, like, I'm already like, let's take this down a notch, you know? So thank you all for leaving your house and putting on pants, or whatever socially appropriate attire you have. Okay, so I'm going to read just a little bit because, you know, you can all read. And hopefully you're going to all be so excited when after this event that you go home and start reading this book immediately. So I'm going to give you an abbreviated version of the intro for about like 12-ish minutes. And if you have come to the skater storytelling block that I organized for the Greater Columbus Arts Council, who, shout out to them, Catherine Matthews is here. I am so grateful for their grants and the way they support my work. But if you've come to the skater storytelling blog before, this is different. It is not what I've read in the past. So let's just dive in. If I were to ask you to think of skaters and skate parks, I assume a couple of things might pop in your head. Tony Hawk and his eponymous Pro Skater video game, skating in empty pools, Dogtown and the Z-Boys, and of course, California. Let's be honest, you probably weren't thinking of the Midwest. Admittedly, I didn't either until I moved here, but when you look closer, this region has a long, storied history of skating in all types: roller skating, rollerblading, and skateboarding. And without the Midwest, these sports wouldn't have been popularized at the rate they were, nor would they be in the zeitgeist to the degree that they are today. While California and the West Coast might be thought of as skate havens, the Midwest has undeniably impacted the trajectory of skating in its many forms for nearly 200 years. And yet, when skating, particularly skateboarding and the culture around skating ramps, is mentioned, it's often California and the West Coast that first come to mind. This is due to one simple reason. While Midwesterners were designing, patenting, and manufacturing skates, Californians were pushing the limits of what one could do on them. They weren't skating outside merely to get from one place to another or to take a rolling stroll through the park. They were turning skating into an action sport, the likes of which had never been seen before. The first roller skates were invented by an enterprising theater company that wanted to mimic ice skating in a stage production. And by the 1850s, roller skating had become popular enough that dedicated roller rinks were being opened in England. However, those early inlines didn't allow for much more than going in a straight line or turning in a wide berth. So it wasn't until the creation of the turning roller skate, the quads most common at rinks now, that roller skating really took off. By the 1880s, rinks dotted the United States, and roller skates were being mass-produced by Micah C. Henley, a Richmond, Indiana man dubbed the King of Roller Skates. Working from the expired patent of Massachusetts-born James Leonard Plimpton's 1863 quad roller skate, Henley added ball bearings for speed and toe stops for brakes to improve upon the design. Henley Roller Skate Works began with a stable at the back of his parents' property, and after expanding 5 times to accommodate demand and hiring more employees beyond his 5 sisters, Henley had a 2-story factory built in downtown Richmond. Though Richmond, Indiana abuts the Ohio state line and is more than 250 miles from the second city, Henley named his best-selling skate the Chicago Skate. At the height of his factory's success, 300 employees were making 2,000 pairs of Chicago skates every day to be sold around the world. Though Henley died in 1927, his son, brother-in-law, and nephew kept the company running until the start of World War II, a time in which no roller skates were manufactured in the US because they weren't essential for the war effort. Despite the similarity in their names, Henry's Chicago Skates had little to do with the Chicago Roller Skate Company, which was founded in 1905 by two brothers, Ralph and Walter Ware, who were actually based in the Windy City. Another brother, Robert, joined the company in 1907, and by 1910, they were 35 employees manufacturing skates in a factory on Washington Boulevard. During World War I, the Chicago Roller Skate Company took a break from skate making to lend their equipment to the war effort. A year later, however, the company's output grew so much that they had to locate to an even larger factory space. This growth bolstered the company through the darkest times of the Depression and allowed them to remain in business. As the love of roller skating continued to grow around the country, the demand for skates that could withstand the rigors of the outdoors grew too. The Chicago Roller Skate Company was the first to manufacture wheels designed specifically for outdoor rolling. Indoor wheels at the time were made of steel, so the company affixed rubber tires around the steel wheels, mimicking automobiles. After the company's skate manufacturing hiatus during World War II, the business continued to grow, eventually producing 3,250 pairs of skates each day. What helped ensure the Chicago Roller Skate Company's success is that in addition to assembling the skates, they manufactured nearly all of the hardware the skates used in-house. And the company's ability to produce its own hardware, as well as customize hardware for specific needs, allowed it to play a formative role in the invention of the skateboard in the 1960s. Before the folks at Bow Surf, a family-owned surfboard shop in Los Angeles, reached out to the Chicago Roller Skate Company for standardized parts to build better skateboards in 1962, the sidewalk surfers of the day bought old roller skates from rinks, disassembled them, and attached the parts to planks of wood. The Chicago Roller Skate Company sold the parts, though it wasn't keen on the idea of skateboarding itself, believing it was a passing fad. And they didn't make inroads to capture that segment of the market. Though many of the early skateboarding manufacturers went belly up, ultimately, Chicago's reluctance to embrace skateboarding and later inline skates quickened the company's demise. The Chicago Roller Skate Company's second generation of family business owners included Gordon Ware, who made one of the earliest designs for inline skates in 1966. Inline skating hadn't caught on by then, especially with the disco era just around the corner, so the design was shelved. In 1981, believing that inline skates would never take off, Chicago Roller Skate Company executives sold their inline patent to Scott Olson, a teenager from Minneapolis who wanted to play hockey outside in the warmer months. Olson would go on to create Rollerblade, a product now so synonymous with inline skating that rollerblading is used to mean just that. While Rollerblade would go on to become a multi-million-dollar company, the Chicago Roller Skate Company would be sold and dissolved into another sporting goods company in the 1990s, thus ending its 90-year reign. While there was certainly skate media coming out of the Midwest in the 1980s and 90s, it came after the initial wave out of California, which set the tone and aesthetic for what viewers would expect from skate media. This included the use of wide-angle fisheye lens and bright, bold colors. Because early camcorders tended to mute colors, skaters wore high-contrast colors, so they stood out against the background, giving them a vibrant, larger-than-life effect. Despite the Midwest playing a massive role in the history of skating, the lack of compelling visual imagery that captured the public's attention from those early days of the sport has maligned the region in many skaters' minds, and some even believe, falsely, that no one skates here even today. Perhaps a more accurate way to get a sense of skate culture is to look at the number of skate parks per capita in a state or geographic region. After all, building a skate park is a huge and expensive endeavor. It requires a fairly large amount of space and thousands or tens of thousands of dollars in materials. It's not a project a city would undertake lightly if there wasn't sufficient demand. A look at Google Maps tells me there are 224 skate parks in California. Unsurprising for the state that takes up 3/4 of the U.S.'s western seaboard and the state that invented skateboarding. That means there's a skate park for roughly every 176,000 people. That sounds like a lot until you do the same math for Pennsylvania, which has 147 skate parks, or one for every 87,000 people. Similarly, Ohio has 123 skate parks, which is one for roughly every 95,000 people. Together, Pennsylvania and Ohio have more skate parks and far more skate parks per capita than California, despite having less than half the population. Nonetheless, all these skate parks wouldn't exist if there weren't skaters to shred them. This raises the ultimate question of this book. When will Midwestern and Rust Belt skaters get their due? Today, apparently. Even so, Midwest Shreds is less of a corrective history and more of a look at our current cultural moment, while attempting to give long overdue credit to everything that was involved in getting to this point. In West Lafayette, Indiana, I talked to a born and bred Hoosier who built the skate park of his dreams in his own backyard, creating a rollerblade haven, because growing up, the closest skate parks to him were 4 to 5 hours away. In St. Louis, I saw how a skate park breathed new life into a formerly abandoned cathedral built in 1886, and how racism rears its ugly head in skating in a place so close to where Michael Brown was murdered. In Des Moines, I went to a brand new, freshly cemented skate park that, with its opening, became the largest in the country, as well as being the host of the only Olympic qualifying event in North America for skateboarding's inauguration to the Olympics in 2020. These are just 3 of the many iconic and underground skate spots featured in this book. The chapters follow my road trip map, starting in and around Columbus, then moving clockwise through the region and back to the beginning. I collected far more stories than I was able to use in this book, but they all speak to a gritty Midwestern DIY ethos and an insatiable love of all things skating in this region. Though the West Coast might have skate parks galore, they don't have these skate parks. And writing this book has clearly shown me what a lot of skaters choose to ignore. It's fucking rad here in the Midwest. Yeah. Lovely moderator Sam, you should introduce yourself because you're so cool.
It's really nice of you. Okay, so I'm Samantha Tucker, and about 18 months ago, my first book came out, and Mandy was my moderator, and we both wrote about skating. I wrote about roller derby, so Sam Tucker, also known as Kegel Scout. I answer to all of those things. And yeah, let's talk about this book. The thing I really want to start with is going to connect to what you just ended with, which is how the hell did we end up here? Because we're both Ohio transplants, right? We both did not grow up here. If you had asked me 10 years ago where I would end up for the rest of my life, this is one of the last places I would have started. And I'm not leaving. I'm saying I'm still surprised, but because I kind of still am. So why? The Midwest is such a crucial part to everything you write about. I heard you say DIY, gritty. Can you talk a little bit more about how you came to Ohio and how you decided to capture the Midwest and how it shreds in the book?
Yeah, of course. I'm also going to grab my beverage because I'm thirsty after talking for so long. Okay. I was like, oh, we cannot reach that table back there. Okay, so how I got to the Midwest. Well, Not gonna lie, Columbus was not on my radar whatsoever as a place I would want to live until I met a man in Alabama, where I'm from, who we had some mutual friends. We started dating, and he's like, "Oh, I'm from Columbus," and I'm like, "Well, that sounds like a boring place." And then we came up to visit, and I was like, "Oh, hey, Columbus, you're all right. I like this." And then I decided that it was finally time to leave Alabama, and it seemed like, well, New York's expensive, so is LA. Seems real dry out there, and there's not a lot of water in the West, so like maybe I should look at the Midwest. Maybe I should move to Columbus for this guy. Funny story, we're no longer together. And you know what, I figured out that, but here's the thing, I fell in love with Columbus so hard, I would do it all 1,000 times over. Like, I figured out that I wasn't in love with him, but I am in love with Columbus, and I don't know, I think Columbus might be a little in love with me too. Does that actually answer the question?
It just sounds like you're now Ohio until you die. Is that right?
Yes, I understand the Ohio till I die now, because I have no desire to leave. They can carry me out of my house in a pine box. So I hope y'all like having me around, because I ain't going nowhere.
Are there native Ohioans here? Whatever native. Right. Okay. Yeah. It's complicated. It's more than complicated. Ohio is, the greater Midwest. Even the way we started this, right? There is this idea that it is devoid of culture, that it is devoid of a lot of things. And your conclusion, you get straight to the point. The Midwest feeds this entire country, right? We really overlook crucial elements of what the Midwest has to offer. So can you maybe tell us, and you need to read the book because it's in the book, but what are the most Midwestern qualities you found in some of the skaters or skate parks or people that you met in this epic skating trip that you took? And can you tell us a little bit about that? You said you were on the road for 5 weeks, right? You went all over the place. Tell us about the Midwest.
So I'm from Alabama, and there are some stereotypes about the South. Not all of them bad, though definitely a lot of bad ones. And Southern hospitality comes up a lot, like this notion of, oh, just come on in, sit on the porch, have you a glass of sweet tea, But when I moved up here, that's when I finally felt what I would call Southern hospitality. I have this really distinct memory of being in the grocery store, and this is the part where you learn I'm a millennial. I had an armful of avocados, and I was trying. It's true, I'm a walking stereotype. But I had this armful of avocados because the grocery store had a really good deal, and so I just very excitedly was putting them all over my chest and arms, and then I realized, oh, I have to actually put these in a bag, and I don't want to set them down because what if someone else gets my perfectly right avocados? Every millennial for themselves, okay? And this sweet woman just very kindly came up and started pulling them off of me and putting them in a bag. And at first I thought, this bitch is kind of scared. But then she hands me the bag and she's like, here honey, I saw you struggling. And I was just like, oh, Midwestern people are really nice. And then another time I'm driving down the side of the road, and you're driving down the side of the road, you see stuff out on the curb, and especially if it's electronics, you're thinking, yeah, that doesn't work. Someone had taken the time to make a sign that said, free, parentheses, it works, we just got a bigger one. And I was like, wow, people are so kind and thoughtful here. And I definitely felt that on my road trip because, I was on the road for 5 weeks, and all the people I interviewed, I didn't know any of them before I showed up at wherever they told me to meet them. see, I'm like, what if they're creepy? But it turns out everyone was so sweet. And I'm gonna be honest with y'all, and I straight up say this in the book, like, I'm not like a quote unquote like good skater. I fall all the time, I bust my ass constantly. I have a massive scar on my ankle that proves just how bad of a skater I am. And so I kept thinking, oh, I'm interviewing, which I did interview some pros in the book, but not everyone in the book is a pro, because I'm learning, some different perspectives. But I kept thinking, oh, somebody's gonna be like, all right, before you can interview me, like, show me your skills. Let's see your skate chops. And then if I didn't perform well enough, I thought they would send me on my way. And I'm happy to report that no one did that. But I had heard, and I'm not trying to just rag on California, but they get way too much credit. I had heard from people in the Midwest who are like, either from California and live in the Midwest now, or grew up in the Midwest, moved to California for a couple of years, specifically for the skate culture, and then chose to move back because they're like, those people are assholes. And so people had told me when I interviewed them, like, oh, if you go out there, people will absolutely heckle you and will get mad at you if you're not really, really good. And I thought about what a gift it is to be able to take my time to learn a new skill and not feel the pressure of having to like be the best or think like, oh yeah, I'm totally going to the X Games or something. Y'all, I'm 33. I started skating on ramps when I was 28. I am not going to the X Games. Spoiler. But yeah, just like how kind and welcoming people were, and just immediately bringing you into the fold. They're like, hey, do you like to do this thing that I like to do? We're friends. And that's just that. So that's part of where I love the Midwest so much, and why I wanted to write a whole book about this particular subculture within it.
I honestly feel like at this point I can mock Ohio or the Midwest, but if somebody else that's not from here does, I get really defensive. And I never expected that either. So one of the most beautiful parts of your book is how intersectional your lens is, right? It's not just about skateboards and avocados, my friends. You cover really, really important themes, and you're talking about race and gender and queerness, and how people are finding community among skaters and among skaters of
I have a diabetic cat, and that is that's my alarm to give her a shot. Don't worry, she'll be fine for a minute.
Do you need to take a call? Is she okay? I think that I want you to talk a little bit more about, as I was reading this last week, I was like on vacation and I had Mandy's book with me everywhere I went, and I kept thinking, this is really like Marx does ramps, right? It's capitalist critique all the way through, right? Do you think Marx could roll?
Marx could totally shred the gnar.
Yeah, I want to hear more about people with marginalized identities and a need for community, and how you started to recognize those spaces being created by skaters of all ilk that you met on your tour.
Yeah, so like I said, I wanted this to be a corrective history to all the cis white dude skateboarders in California, and I thought, if I'm going to do a corrective history, I'm going to really do a corrective history. And, of course, like with anything intersectional, you look within yourself first. I'm Palestinian, I'm queer, I'm from Appalachia, I am plus size, so I was like, I want more people like me in the book. And then extending beyond that, I interviewed like a ton of BIPOC folks, like a ton of queer folks, like apologies to any cis white dude skateboarders in the room, you are the minority in this book. And that is very intentional, because, and especially when you look at legacy skate media, like the magazines and the video platforms have been around for a really long time, even today, it's majority cishet white dudes. And there are so many more of us who are skating, and slowly but surely, more and more magazines are popping up for us, and I'm wanting to contribute to that. And then, like, I'll admit, I did not set out to write a book. I've loved to read ever since I was a little kid, so whenever I get into a hobby, I want to learn all about it. I want to know the history. Who are the major players? How did we get here? And so I went to bookstores, went to libraries, started asking around for books about skating, and couldn't find really anything narrative about non-West Coast, non-cishet white dudes skateboarding. And there's this saying in the writing world, if there's a book you want to read that doesn't exist, you have to write it. So I took that very literally. And when I first started this project, I thought I'd get like one article out of it, because those of you who know me in real life, or like who aren't meeting me the first time tonight, I guess, know that I'm a freelance writer, and I've been doing that for a really long time. So I thought, like, oh, I'll dig around and interview some folks, and I'll get like an article out of it. And then as I kept going, I was like, oh, maybe like a feature article. This is getting longer. And then the next thing I know, I've got like 20,000 words, and I was like, maybe I should start looking at pitching a book. So that's kind of how this came to be. And so I definitely approached it with intentionality. I think in part because I didn't set out to write a book, but then I realized that when I realized that that's what I was doing, I knew that I had to fill in the gaps. So I also thought it would get really boring really fast if it was just like, here's the best skate park in Chicago, here's the best skate park in Detroit. So every chapter has a theme. So like, for example, in the Chicago chapter, I actually went to the worst skate park in the city. So it's like an anti-tourism thing. I also talked a lot about how city planning is a racist enterprise. And when you look at like who is skating versus like where the skate parks are in the city. And like that came up a lot in St. Louis too. Like, people who don't drive and have to take the bus, like the bus routes are limited too, just like here. And the lack of access, and especially like, in places where it gets really cold, where are the indoor skate parks? Are they sustainably run? How can we make them sustainably run? And so, yeah, I get into anti-capitalist and social justice themes in every single chapter, in different ones, that are, well, true to its name, intersectional. And that is absolutely by design.
I think it's important that people understand too, like it's not a tour of, I have so many notes. It's not a tour of just Midwest skating parks. This project is activist, right? A lot of times I think what you're getting at too is that skating, whether it's skateboarding, whether it's, there's a guy on a unicycle. Has anyone ever seen a unicyclist in real life?
It's crazy.
I didn't think it was real, but it's real. You talk a lot about these intersectional things, but also that any of these forms of skating are resistance, in fact. I think that I'm interested to hear more about this idea of skating as resistance, right? That you talk about people having to find any space they can to practice their hobby, to practice their art of skating. You talk about all of these impediments, like the police, like churches who don't want kids in their parking lots, or these stereotypes that people have about skateboarders. There's issues of class, right? Where do you live? How do you have access? Access is such a key part of people having this ability, being able to do these things. And then you've got all these people in this book, and this is something that you say too, talking about skating is freedom. You go to the Rydell factory, the guy says skating is freedom. And especially these days, constantly looking for proof that anything like democracy was ever real. Can you talk more about that? Like, why is skating freedom? What does that really mean? There's think there's like 4 people in your book that say that mention those specific words.
Oh yeah, there's like a very literal sense of like, if you don't skate, there may be other equivalents in the world, perhaps skydiving, I guess. I don't know, I've never done that, and that freaks me out. But there's a sense of when you have wheels under your feet and you're just like flying down the road or like flying on these ramps, and you feel like you're defying gravity. And what is freedom if not that, you know, in like this very like physical sense anyway. And then there's the more, I guess, like philosophical and activist sense of people using skating as self-expression and to advocate for causes that they really love. Like one of my favorite people I interviewed in the book, Tia Pearl, is a world champion wheelchair skater, like one of the best in the world. She's doing like these extreme stunts and stuff in her wheelchair at skate parks and on her like crutches and stuff. And like she's showing people that like, yeah, disabled people do action sports. And that is absolutely a form of activism. And then like another person I interviewed, Carly Thornton, who runs Fro Skate in Chicago. It is a collective of Black skaters who do rollouts for like various, you know, like they did like a March for Palestine, like a rollout for Mike Brown, you know, every time, you know, the fucking police kill another Black person with impunity, they roll out in their honor to like say their names, you know, and that's their way of bringing attention to these issues and keeping these people's memories alive and advocating to, you know, take money away from the cops. And I talk a lot about cops harassing people who are skating in this book a lot because it happens all the time. And it's this really, I think, insidious thing where cities are like, oh, we don't want to build skate parks because it brings in riffraff or whatever, or, you know, they're just going to tag everything and be degenerates. But yet, if you don't give people a place to skate, they're going to skate wherever. But then, like, that exposure of just having to skate wherever you find a spot opens you up to being harassed by the cops. So it's like they're perpetuating their own stereotype by not giving people a place to skate. And then having like certain neighborhoods be over-policed. Like you're just creating excuses for cops to arrest these folks when all they want to do is practice a sport, you know? And it's just beyond ridiculous that this keeps happening. But also what I, you know, talk about in the book too is that I think some places are realizing that if you don't give people, that people aren't just going to quit skating. The sport is enduring and it's only growing. So, for example, in the Des Moines chapter, Des Moines, Iowa just built the largest skate park in the country. AKA, it's not in California. It's in Iowa, y'all.
It's the Midwest! Are we the only ones that are that excited?
Midwest. But yeah, so now, like, I think some cities are getting wise to it, and now skate tourism is a thing. Like, it's a huge thing in Des Moines now, because when you have a skate park that's 88,000 square feet, you better believe people are coming from all over the country to visit it. So yeah, just every chapter has like an activist lens and an access lens, and yeah, and it all ties back to skating.
If you look at my notes here, it's, see all the stars, it says wheels equal democracy ? And then there's that's a poop emoji. And then I wrote no such thing. How was that? It was a rough morning. Another thing that really stood out to me is this idea of mutual aid through skate communities. And inevitably, especially in the skate church chapter, maybe you can tell everybody just for a minute about the skate church, what that place was like. But I want to talk about these communities that are popping up and they're using skating as a way to have people find release, but also to get a leg up in their life. People who are struggling, people who are unhoused, who need support. There's a real collective movement that we found in these different communities, and a lot of mutual aid. This one happens to be connected to religion, so please talk a little bit about that, and then I have another question to add on to that.
Yeah, so fun story. I grew up in an evangelical cult, and it took me a good while to escape, and now I am a very vocal atheist. So when I heard about skate church,
This whole place is an evangelical
America is
Yeah,
an evangelical
it is.
cult. So when I heard about skate church, it's a church that literally built an indoor skate park because there wasn't one in the city. It's like in the Quad Cities area. It's Davenport, Iowa. There wasn't one in the area, or not like a good one. And the local skaters were constantly complaining, and so they were coming to this church parking lot to skate. And instead of doing what 99% of churches do, which is say, get out of here, don't come back, we're going to call the cops on you, they said, hey, if we started building ramps in the parking lot, like, would you be into that? And so slowly, like over the course of like, I think that they're on their 25th year, they went from just having these temporary ramps in the parking lot to building a full-fledged skate park inside the church. And I'm not gonna lie to y'all, that was the place I was most nervous about going because it's been a long, long time since I've been in the church and I was not looking forward to going back. But I gotta say, this place really surprised me. You walk in, and it's not just a church, it's also like a hub for all these nonprofits. And they were doing like, there was a harm reduction nonprofit, there was a pay what you can coffee shop. And you know, even if pay what you can is nothing. There was a free store. They were giving away food, like serving dinner every night. And like they had free hip hop classes for the local folks in town. And then they were charging like $4 to get into this indoor skate park, and which those of you who go to indoor skate parks know that that is a ridiculously low fee. Like $4, that's nothing. I mean, sometimes you pay 10, 15, 20 bucks to get into a good skate park because they are expensive to maintain. So like I understand why they're expensive. But this one in particular, the $4 that you pay to go funds their food bank. And, you know, I'm listening to, you know, these people talk, and I'm like witnessing, you know, this mutual aid happening like literally while I was there. So like in the middle of interviewing the woman who runs it, like this guy came in and was like, hey, like it rained really bad last night and all my quilts got damp and I don't have a way to dry them. And she was like, you know, how long, let's like try to find you something, you know, like let's do something about this. And at that point, like I think the quilts had just been wet for so long that like even if you dried them, it wasn't gonna really work. It was like mildewy and stuff. And you know, she like gave him a sleeping bag and just no questions asked. Just like, you need this, you take this. And so part of their thing is they tell everyone who comes to the skate park, whether or not they attend the church or not, they don't, honestly, I don't think they care if you attend the church. They just want you to come skate the park and pay your $4 so they can keep going with the food bank. And they tell everybody like, hey, your $4 is feeding a family. You know, like, thanks for doing that. Thanks for coming here. Like, you could be skating on the streets for free or, you know, going somewhere else, but you chose to come here and your $4 makes a difference. And that's just one of the many, many examples of mutual aid I found, you know, in writing this book.
We're going to open it up to questions from you guys in just a second, but I guess with the mutual aid thing, you make a few references to it being like a religion for you, right? Like a religious replacement. And this is something I wrote about in the Roller Derby book too. I did say roller derby is a cult, it kind of is. But I think it's really interesting, so many of these places you visited, one of the things they had in common was people looking for community. There's a place called Skatopia in West Virginia. They're anarchists, Rutland, Ohio. Skatopia, Cars on Fire, anarchist bowls. It's just but people are hungry for community. Do you feel like you have found a secular replacement for that kind of community that you left behind through your skating community? Do you think what do you think of that need that people seem to be filling through their sport, their hobby?
Well, I think it's a community thing and a mental health thing. Community because skating tends to be very singular. Yeah, you're athletic, but you're not a jock. You're definitely not a jock. You're definitely not on a team sport. But like a lot of things in life, it's more fun with friends. And if you can find people who, let me back up. You have to have a certain mindset, non-skaters might say mental illness, to put wheels under your feet and go jump off ramps. Unless you have that sense of need for adrenaline or sense of adventure, it sounds objectively nuts, right? And so finding other people who understand why that's fun and aren't just trying to talk you out of it, aren't you afraid you're gonna break your face and bust your teeth out of your head? That's really special, finding people who understand you. And then the mental health aspect, and I talk about this in the book too, I was not particularly athletic before I started getting on ramps. I ran track and cross country in high school, but honestly, it was a proxy for an eating disorder. And I was obsessed with my mile time. I was, constantly trying to get my time down and go faster. And I wanted to go up steeper hills to burn more calories. And I was constantly weighing and measuring myself to an absolutely unhealthy degree. And so once I realized I'm killing myself with this eating disorder, I basically stopped exercising cold turkey because I couldn't just do it without counting and without obsessing over it. But when you're skating ramps, you are so focused on just what's in front of you in that moment and not dying that you don't have the bandwidth to count stuff. You don't have the energy to think, oh, I wonder how many times I've, done this trick or gone back and forth on this half pipe or whatever. You just don't, all of your mental and physical energy is the next trick, the next thing in front of you, not breaking your ankle like I did once. And just trying to keep yourself alive and how fun it is. That there's really nothing to obsess over. And so that's why it's a sport that works for my weird brain, because at least for me, skating can't. Not that I found, it can't give me an eating disorder. So I keep doing it. And a lot of people I interview in the book say that various aspects of skating saved their lives. There's one guy you'll meet, he goes by Gnarly Jargon. His real name is Gerald Schweitweiler or something. And I was oh, I get why you go by Gnarly Jargon. He makes that joke too, so I'm not just roasting the man. But he had gotten dumped by his girlfriend. He was addicted to hard drugs for a while. He was unhoused, and skateboarding saved his life, very literally. And I'm really excited for y'all to meet him in the book because he is such a great human. But there's absolutely a mental health and community part, and part of his recovery with skating. Not just the mental health, but was the skate community he found. For a while, he was sleeping on a couch in the back of a skate shop because, he had gotten hired and didn't have any place to go. And so the people who owned the skate shop and the skaters in town were yeah, you can crash with me. It's cool. And, who knows where he would be if he hadn't kept skating.
All right, let's open it up to you guys. Do you have any questions about skating, about riding? Yeah, if you have one, would you mind coming up and saying it into the mic, or do you want to bring up one? Yeah, go ahead.
What place that you visited surprised you the most, and in what way?
Ooh, good question. For folks who couldn't hear, they said, what place that I visited surprised me the most and in what way? I mean, definitely Skate Church surprised me, because I ended up telling the woman at the end of our interview, I was like, I'm gonna be real with you. I'm a raging atheist, but if this place was in Columbus, I'd come here. And it takes a lot for me to say that. I was also really surprised by Skatopia, because it was, for folks who don't know what Skatopia is, you'll definitely find out in the book, but it is an anarchist commune that gets really rowdy and wild. It was started by this now retired pro skateboarder in the 90s, and I mean, he was all about like hard drugs, the guns, every bad stereotype about a skater that you can think of, he took that up to 11. But he built this incredible, I mean, it's $1 million world-class park. I even call it in the book, it's like the skating equivalent of a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which does not.
There's a school bus with a ramp built around it?
Yeah, he built a school bus into a bowl so you can air over the school bus and back in. I did not do that because I had value in my life. But, and to be clear, him building a world-class skate park does not in any way justify his behavior and many abuses toward women, and there is a reason that man has had multiple stints in prison. But I was terrified to go there, understandably. And it ended up, I guess I caught it on a chill day, because I was the only one there. He was in prison, so I didn't have to deal with him. But I ended up talking to essentially his right-hand man, who was completely opposite than him in personality, and is just a cool dude who loves skateboarding. And so he lives on the property and helps maintain the ramps. And honestly, I could not have picked a better person to talk to, because this man was not scary at all. I at no point feared for my life. Also, this place has a reputation for burning cars, and I was like, look, my little Toyota is from 2002, but she's the only one I got, okay? I cannot have these people setting my car on fire. So they have a skate museum on the property, and I parked really close to the skate museum. If these motherfuckers burn down my car, they're gonna burn down the museum too. But yeah, those were definitely surprising.
Quick thinking, Mandy. Yeah, go ahead.
Mandy, if there was an additional chapter to this book, or a part 2 to this book, what would it be? Or do you see an additional book to Midwest Shreds, more steamy narratives?
I don't know if everybody heard that, but if there was an additional chapter, an addendum, or another book, what would you write about?
Ooh, that's another really good question. I mean, there are so many more stories than what I was able to include in this. I could totally write Midwest Shreds Volume 2. I kind of want someone else to, though. Because part of the problem is that, the same people in the legacy skate media get their voices heard over and over and over again, and I don't want to inadvertently perpetuate that problem. I'd love for some BIPOC folks to write their own version of Midwest Shreds, or whatever other thing they want to do. I want to see more skate media that's not just cishet white dudes skateboarding. But I don't know that I want to be the one to write it.
Hell yeah.
Am I running or are you running? I don't know if this chord is good.
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, Skatopia is in one of Des Moines art themes, which is pretty cool. One of the most iconic things about the Tony Hawk series are the soundtracks. So what do you listen to when you're skating, or what do you put out as your soundtrack for skating?
Such a good question. Didn't play on Chapel Road, where is it?
I love this question. Okay, so, I mean, My Chemical Romance is my favorite band of all time, and coincidentally, it is also really fun to skate to. Like, I'm not about to be skating to like some slow music, you know, or like even like gentle hip hop. No, I need the hardcore beats. I need like heavy guitar riffs. I need bass. For a hot minute, every time I went to Skate Naked, which I always have to clarify is an indoor skate park in Columbus. I am not skating without clothes. First of all, that is illegal. Second of all, I don't have high opinions of someone who actually did that, and I wrote about it in the book. You can read about that later. Anyway, there was a hot minute when I'd go to Skate Naked, and whoever was working was really into like Ozzy Osbourne. And so like just Black Sabbath, like endlessly. And so now in my head, like at first I was like, oh, this is cool. And then the second time I was like, oh, they're still playing that. I like the fifth time I was like, I am so sick of skating to Black Sabbath.
But War Pigs.
But now it's like, well, it's embedded in my head now. Black Sabbath is in the rotation. Actually, it's funny, like, when we got here, I was like, well, since it's my book launch, can I be extra and request music? And the TBR folks lovingly said yes, and I was like, put on some Chapel Roan and Daft Punk. So yeah, definitely that. Anybody else got a question? I'll take as many as y'all got, but also no pressure, because you know, we got cake. I want to sign all of your books. So yeah, I mean, I guess hedge your bets. Which do you want more? Do you answer questions or do you want cake?
I think the people want cake. Oh, wait, there's a question, there's a question.
I've got a quick one. So it sounds like you skated at all the ones. Here we go next time. Best trick you landed and worst beef you ate.
Yes.
Okay, so
Wait, did he, worst beef?
best trick I landed and worst beef I ate. Okay, so I was on this road trip for 5 weeks solo, and my thinking was, I better not try anything too crazy, because if I break a bone, like, I'm fucked. So I'll admit, I didn't try any new tricks the entire time I was on the trip, because I didn't want to break anything. Especially I was like, oh my God, what if I broke my driving foot? Like, literally, who would come rescue me? How would I get home? And the irony is, when I did break my ankle, I was out of town. I was at Woodward East in middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. It's this world-class skate facility. And shout out to my darling boyfriend who drove 14 hours round trip to come get my ass, because
There are some faces out there, but this is the most shocking thing that you said all night, that someone drove 14 hours. Somebody was like, oh my God.
yeah, because I broke my driving foot. The thing that I feared did happen, just not on that trip. But let me see, worst beef I ate was definitely at that Chicago skate park, because it was the worst in the city. Yes, so the skate park is under an interstate overpass, and so pigeons would roost. And I found out the hard way that pigeon shit is very slick, and if your wheels hit it, you can't really recover from that. We're just not going to talk about that, but you can read about it. Any other questions?
Yeah. What's your favorite skate park in Columbus?
What's my favorite skate park in Columbus? Definitely Skate Naked. I think because I have a soft spot for it, even though it's like dirty and gross and kind of falling apart, and you leave with like a thick layer of grime under your nails, and there are creative places where people have chosen to put trash.
Yes.
And you've
Yes.
been. They're just like old water bottles and like chip bags, like, oh, just stuffed in the corner, stuffed in the hole. But I think I love it because that was where I first met my skate community, or the people who would become my skate community. And these two women like lovingly taught me basically all the steps and everything I knew, like all those foundations. And they were so kind, like holding my hand when I dropped in for the first time. And so I just have like a lot of good memories there. So even though it's not a quote unquote like good park, it's really special to me. Okay, y'all want some cake? Oh my God, I love y'all so much. Okay, so $2 Radio is gonna carve up that cake. Probably, what?
We gotta get a picture of it first.
Oh, yes, I gotta get a picture with the cake first. Also, you know what? Hey, do you have your phone? I'm gonna get like a selfie with everybody. Like, is that cheesy? Okay, I assume you all consent to being photographed.
One, two, three, skate naked.
Skate naked!
1, 2, 3, cake.
Thanks, y'all. Okay, I'm going to be signing books at this table over here if y'all want to form a line. I will say, because I know it's a Tuesday, it's late, I know y'all have to work in the morning. If you have to get up early in the morning, just bring yourself to the front, and we'll try to make it work.
I'm in the right spot.